Hi, this is Matt Donegan from Challenger Stories. I'm here with Rebecca from the Wilful Group. Rebecca, tell us about the Wilful Group.
Well, it's nice to meet you, Matt. Yeah, the Wilful Group is a communications consultancy working with companies driving planet and people positive innovation. So we work across corporate and consumer markets, but our clients fall really into two categories. They're either innovators, so those sort of brand new startups and scale ups with really new ideas to drive that green transition, or they are established brands and organizations that are really having to change and adapt to have a more positive impact on the planet and the people who they work with. And it's a very, very challenging, very dynamic, very sort of volatile time in the world at the moment. And with these organizations, there are more channels than ever before that they can use to communicate. So they have a voice on social media. There are the traditional channels of print and broadcast media. There are podcasts like this one. There are messaging apps, and there are all ways in which they can communicate, but there are also ways in which their audiences can feed back. So what happens is that there's a real difficulty in how to communicate what are quite positive transition stories, and they need experts like Wilful in order to help them navigate and which channels to use, how to pitch their stories. And I guess that's really where we come in. And it's interesting for us because we've obviously been in the market for over 20 years. Although Wilful's a relatively new company, the founding agencies have been in market for about 20 years. So we've got lots and lots of really, really good experience, having gone through major periods of innovation to apply advice and guidance to those organizations. So we believe that by communicating well, we're going to help those companies navigate the noise that's out there. We are bringing our expertise to those organizations, and fundamentally, we are helping those companies drive that transition to improve the planet, to address the climate crisis, and to help make people's lives better by effective communications.
So you make a really good and powerful point, and one that I perhaps hadn't considered as much before today, which was we're coming out of the data age, if you like, and we're now moving into an age which seems to be the communication age, because there are so many different channels. And the old adage, the Churchillian adage of a lie could travel around the world before the truth gets the chance to put its trousers on, or whatever the reference was. It's never been truer than it is today, because the diversification of communication. So you've got to get it right. It's got to be tied up, doesn't it? It's got to be defined. It's got to be strategic, and then it's got to be deployed with the right tactics. So you work across all of that. Is that right?
We absolutely do. And I think there's never before has there been such monumental shifts in the world.
Yeah.
And you cannot land a message unless you take those into account.
Yeah.
So you have to understand the context, not just of the media, but of the media has a responsibility to reflect back public sentiment. So you need to understand what's important to the public. You need to understand what the big media narratives are and their agenda. And you need to consider all that before you actually even go external with a message. So how to land that message when there's so much noise going on, and how to land it so that it impacts positively, because there's a lot of fear of greenwashing as well. That's a big area that our clients are really afraid of. So it's how to land that message so that it cuts through, but so that it has authenticity as well, so it's not seen as greenwashing. And there are very few companies out there getting it 100% right.
Yeah.
So we feel our job, we understand that it's not just about working with the perfect top of class companies. It's actually about helping those organizations who are doing good things but need just a bit of help in communicating that. So we see very much our job as helping those organizations to be better. So it's not just about writing press releases, it's about fundamentally how you tell your stories and how you impact those audiences.
Yeah, it's walk the walk as well as talk the talk. I see that. I know you have excellent credentials in ESG in particular. And that is, you mentioned greenwashing just now, and I think ESG is often a terminology that's applied for shareholders or for market positioning. But you live and breathe it, don't you? Because the company is also B Corp. So how did that decision come around?
It actually came around from the founding of the Wilful Group, essentially. So the Wilful Group's about 3 years old, and we founded in 2021, but actually the original idea came about in around 2018, 2019. So I had been working in the innovation, the digital disruption markets, and my business partner, Nada, had been working in purpose and impact. And we were sat together, we'd known each other from a long time ago. We both used to work in the first round of the dot-com era, so sort of 98, 99, 2000. And we've both gone through that together. And we'd stayed in touch ever since. We were good friends, and we were sat together in 2018, 2019, and we realized that actually our worlds were coming together, and that a lot of the investment and the innovation and the entrepreneurs' focus was in new ideas and technologies that were going to address the climate crisis. In fact, we'd actually, I think at that point, pitched for the same piece of business. And we said, hold on here, we've got amazing experience from these two markets. If we combine them, we can form a new brand and a new business solely focused on helping that real change that's going to happen, that needs to happen to address, you know, some of the major problems the world was facing. So we agreed to merge the companies in 2019, but along rolled COVID, and so we kept our heads down and got on with things for 18 months, and then we merged the companies in 2021. And my business partner, Nada's agency, was one of the first B Corps in sort of 2016, 2017. And so they brought the principles of B Corp into the group, although we hadn't actually certified as a group. And we weren't sure whether that was what we wanted to do. We were really sort of feeling our way. We'd merged the company, and we had a really good 5-year business plan, all based on what the kind of 5 years before COVID was. And very quickly we realized that despite, you know, best made plans, actually life doesn't always focus, or doesn't always do that what we want it to do. And so we very quickly realized that although Nada and I had been friends for 20 years, we'd worked together, we had a new agency of two very, very distinct cultures. And we've been friends. We thought, oh, look, cultures are bound to be the same. You know, we get on really well, but they weren't. And we realized that in order for us to bring those two cultures together, because people tend to like sit in where they feel comfortable, and I think particularly with smaller businesses, often it's almost the culture of the leader, the founder, that creates the culture of the business. And so we had, you know, Nada's team, and then we had Bex's team, and we needed to create something new that everybody could get behind. And we realized that really, really quickly. So we started to think about how we did that. And B Corp kind of evolved out of that, but there was a process to it. First of all, we realized that we needed to create a new vision and a new mission for Wilful. That goes without saying. But rather than us sort of squirreling ourselves away and doing it, you know, off in some management meeting somewhere, we decided to let the team do that together. And we sent them down to some woods down in Sussex to work with a coach down there, because we felt that it needed to be hosted and moderated separately, and coaches are really amazing at doing that. So they all went down to the woods. They were immersed in nature, and they were learning about how natural ecosystems work. And then at the end of that, they were then taken out, and then they were asked to create the vision and the mission and the values for the agency. So that was a fantastic piece of work, because not only were the team experiencing nature, and that's what we're all about, to make sure that we protect it, but equally they were devising the future of the business. And we brought that out and then kind of worked on it all together, and then sort of shared it and presented it as a team. So that was really good. The process that we went through in defining the values was really, really important. because it came from the organization. And what we were then able to do was to identify behaviors that would encourage those values, and then the behaviors that weren't really aligning with the values. And what we were able then to do was to address the kind of naysayers and the not on boarders, the people who weren't on the Wilful bus. And they self-selected themselves out of the business, because, you know, that's fine, that's okay. And so the people that were brought in were hired on the basis of those values and the vision, the mission. So they were definitely on the bus from day one. And those people who really believed in what we were setting out to do also then stayed and became very encouraged. So we were starting to form the culture there, but you can't just do that. One of the things that we had learned is that we needed to put some structures in place in order to be able to keep fulfilling that culture. And there were a few things that we did. First of all, we set up what we call our WOW days, and WOW stands for We Own Wilful, as in the fact that we are a service business, our people are our power, therefore they have a direct responsibility in, you know, for the success of Wilful. And those days are in line with the seasons, because in nature there's significant changes that happen seasonally. And we found that the biggest change happens in the spring and the autumn, so that where we were going to make commitments to the change in the organisations, they would be in that period. And in the summer and in winter, they were periods of kind of joining together, either celebrating the summer or joining together, usually around Christmas, to say, you know, it's a kind of tradition. So these 4 WOW days that happen in line with the season are an opportunity for us to reflect on our impact on the business over the past sort of, you know, 3 months, 6 months, to look at the business's impact on its wider stakeholder group, and then also to make commitments to what we're going to do over the next 3 to 6 months. So those are real pillars in the sort of lifetime of the agency. Added into that, we have 2 anonymous team surveys that go out, and those are played back into the team in the spring and the autumn WOW days, and they will show up perhaps areas that people wouldn't necessarily come to me and say, and we're able to spot them in the answers to those questions that we send out. And we're also able to track our progress over time. And the good news is we're doing a good job. So that's good. But I think one area that came up as an example of that is that, not the last survey, I think the one before, there was a lot of feedback that we weren't diverse enough as an organisation, and that diversity and inclusion was very, very important to the team, and that we weren't doing a good enough job with it. So we took that away and we put a working group together, and we looked at it, and we looked at why aren't we? And we looked at our recruitment policies. We looked at, you know, the level of experience that we were bringing people in, and we found that there were some changes we needed to make. So the main, right the way back into the industry and make some changes at source, because our industry is not a very diverse industry. So we came up with the idea of creating what's called the Wilful Foundation Programme. And that is a programme where our account managers and our account directors go into schools in diverse areas, or areas with, you know, kind of a low socio-economic profile, and we go into those schools and we talk to GCSE students and sixth form students about the PR industry and about what it's like and about what you can do, and that's not given by me or the other leadership team. It's by our account managers and account directors, because they're much closer in age to the people they're talking to. Yep. So we set that program up. We also then enabled much more flexibility within our intern program to allow interns to come in for a couple of weeks, for 3 months, for a year, so that it's not just really rigid, and that actually those students in schools that we're going out and talking to can come into the organisation, even if it's just for a couple of weeks as an intern, to get a flavour for how our industry works. And we keep in touch with them as well. So we've just started. This term has been our starting point, and we're now rolling it out. So that's a tangible, I suppose, project that's come out as a result of the survey. Yeah. So that's just a way, I think, of bringing people together to work on willful projects that are not just focused on client delivery.
Yeah.
On B Corp, we very quickly realised that the pillars of B Corp were a really, really solid foundation to organise the operational elements of the business. So how we can start running the business in line with our vision and our mission. So the B Corp pillars are environment, community, workers, staff, governance, and customers. And there when you go through the B Corp process, you have to demonstrate how you are adhering to certain sort of key factors against those pillars, and it shows you areas where you're weak, and then you can hold that up and adjust and change. So we started to go through that B Corp process as well, so that the organisation was being run responsibly as a force for good. And we've actually changed our articles of association as well, so that we have a firm commitment that it's not just about shareholder benefit, it's about stakeholder benefit.
Yes. Yeah.
And that has really helped us really look within the business and start to change old habits. So an old habit might be go for the cheapest supplier, right? But actually with B Corp, it's not about going for the cheapest supplier. It's about going for the supplier that is local. It's about what are the supply chain, what's the supply chain for that supplier? What are their environmental credentials? So all of that goes into the list of how we view our partners.
Yeah.
And they might not be the cheapest, but they are having the biggest impact.
And I think that's really important to the workforce in the current environment, and also more and more businesses are looking to work with the right type of partners. And for those who don't quite understand what B Corp is, there's a greater there's a legal responsibility, and you've changed your articles of association to reflect that, to treat your staff, your suppliers, even your clients and it's not just about the shareholder, it's not just about shareholder value, which is one of the reasons I believe that we've seen some of the acts by some of the larger corporations not being they haven't gelled with the public. So there is a requirement to move over. More and more businesses are doing it. I see more and more businesses becoming B Corp, and you know that when you deal with B Corp, you expect a certain type of behavior. And that what you've done with all the cultural aspects of the business, I'm sure that there are certain smaller companies who will look at some of the activities that you've done and say, God, that sounds a bit American. So focusing on values and change and how to bring the culture of the business together is absolutely vital. It is the soul of a company. If the management systems are the heartbeat, then and you're absolutely right, the culture of the business is what defines the acts, the behaviors of everybody inside that business. So I'm a huge fan of what you've done at Wilful. I'm just with the foundation of B Corp, and then all the practices you put in place. I think it's fantastic. It's what every business needs to do, but most certainly defining that culture. So look, let's move on a little bit from culture. And if I can, one of the aspects that you touched on earlier was about you came from a background of innovation, and that is part of the culture of Wilful. So tell me about that. Why are you driven by innovation?
I think over the last 30 years of my career experience, the thing I have realized is that things are always changing, and that change, rather than resisting it, because I think as human beings we tend to resist it. We feel safe in our nice place, but the world doesn't work like that. Right. And change is a naturally occurring phenomenon.
Yeah.
And so therefore we need to embrace that change and we need to make it happen. And so the idea fundamentally of change as a good thing is what I hold very dear, and it's very close to my heart.
Yeah.
What change does is two things. It shakes everything up in the air, makes everybody feel uncomfortable, and there are particularly change, for example, at the moment. It's very hard at the moment. We're in a very volatile, global, geopolitical, economic situation. And I've been through that a couple of times before, because change gives you experience. And I think the fundamental, most important thing is to take that experience and apply it into the change that's happening now. So there's a couple of things that I have learned over my very long career and my 20 odd years in running my own business. And that is when there's difficulty, one has to actively manage your business. You've got to keep it going. And the entrepreneurs who are solely focused on this vision at all costs are brilliant, and many do succeed, but many fail as well, because they are not in touch necessarily with the business and actually with the culture as well. Yeah. So active management within a business is very, very important. Keeping your eye on the cash flow, and keeping your eye on how the team's feeling, keeping your eye on the pipeline, all of those things, fundamental. Yeah. But the other thing as well, when everything is thrown up in the air and there's a period of disruption, is you have to innovate. You've got to change. It doesn't land in the same way when everything's thrown up in the air. Yeah. So you have to think about what is the opportunity here to innovate. So an example of that is that because I had come through this dot-com boom and bust in the late 90s, I realized that there was an incredible opportunity with new digital technologies. And it was incredible, the ideas that people were having around that time. The fundamental problem at that time was that nobody was on the internet. So, we didn't have broadband in our home. There was just nobody there to kind of, accept these brilliant ideas. So it was a little bit too soon. But when the sort of recession came in 2007, 2008, there was internet. And broadband had started to, or was actually probably quite well established in people's homes by that time. So when my business came into the 2007-2008 recession, we'd been working a lot in the media industry before that. And I realized that in order to be able to innovate, I needed to go back to go forwards. So I went back to all of the amazing people I'd met in those dot-com days who were starting to appear again in new businesses. And there were really interesting, America was a bit further ahead, so there were really interesting digital businesses coming out of the US that wanted to expand and grow. So by going backwards into that digital kind of industry, I was able then to innovate in my own business and then set out its path for the next 10 and now 15, 16 years. So it doesn't always have to be a brand new product or a brand new idea. In fact, when budgets are tight and things are tough, it's a big risk, sort of, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, investing in something completely new. But innovation doesn't have to be about that. It's about thinking about the core premise of your business and how can you market it moving forward. And that very much is what I passionately believe in. So change is good. Yeah. We should accept it and make it happen, and we should use it to innovate.
So evolution rather than revolution is what you're saying.
So. Yeah, absolutely.
I completely buy that. Absolutely, 100%. There's an interesting perspective, which is that in the modern day environment, in society as it stands at the moment, entrepreneurs are the hunters of old. And the hunters of old took risks. They went out, they did sometimes crazy things to bring back the kill, as it were. And we now live in an environment where there is sometimes a very thin line between being the entrepreneur hunter and being seen to be the crank or the dreamer. And that's really interesting, because when you run a business, and you have for the last more than 20 years, you've had to be the hunter. How often do you think you've been on the edge of being the dreamer?
I'm a dreamer. I've been frustrated. I think that's the word. So I have had what I think are amazing ideas, and then been really frustrated that I haven't been able to put them into practice.
Yeah.
So I think actually in a way that's also one of the reasons why we merged the companies to form the Wilful Group, because there's also a size at which you have the capacity and the capital in order to be able to fund those dreams.
Yeah.
So when you're a small business, it's very hard to have, a big pot of money swishing around in order to be able to invest in all of your dreams, or the people to make those dreams happen. So there is also that you have to get to a certain size, a certain scale, and there's a number of books, aren't there, written about, the pinch points within a company, an organization's growth. But just having the capacity and some capital to be able to invest in those dreams has been more recently a wonderful, wonderful thing, because I was frustrated for so long. I had lots of amazing ideas, but I just didn't have the time or the resources to be able to put into them. And then what's really annoying is you see somebody else doing it, you go, oh, I have that idea.
Yeah.
I could have done that. That was my idea. So I think it's about also not chasing every idea, but selecting one and giving it a go. How can I do this cheaply, economically, with real authenticity? Give it a go. And it doesn't have to be perfect.
No, it doesn't. And in fact, sometimes, well, the perfect is the enemy of the good, isn't it? And what you're saying, and it really, really hits home, is nothing good ever happens in the comfort zone. If you're not growing, in many ways, as an entrepreneur, you're dying. You just become a manager, and you cease to become a leader. And you've clearly led your business. Your business is through, well, let's take them. So we've had a .com crash. We've had the great financial shock, the credit crunch. We have had COVID, and now we have a different form of stress and pressure, where we've got, as you mentioned earlier, lots of different pinch points, so social, economic ones, some of overseas, some within our own borders, and there's a sort of amalgamation of these pressure points. So I guess where I'm coming to with this is, if I were going to ask you if you had a tip that you would leave to someone starting a business at the moment, what's the one jewel of information you would give them?
I would say be really, really clear on what success looks like for you.
Yeah.
Success is not determined by, the economy, a society. Success is determined by you.
Absolutely.
And an example of that is with B Corp. Our success, yes, we have shareholders we have to report to, and yes, we need to have financial success, but not at any cost. Because we have committed to making sure that the people who work for us, the people we impact, that we're treating them well, because our business needs to be a force for good. That to us is success. So we might not be the most profitable or the fastest growing, whatever it is, but our success metrics are different. So to anybody starting out in business today, I would say be clear about what success looks like to you, not by anybody else.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I speak to many, many different businesses. I coach lots of different businesses, and that is the one starting proposition that every business should be looking at when they're defining what the culture is, what their values are. It's start with the end in mind. What does success looks like? I completely agree with you. I think thank you for that. That's an absolute gem. Now, I'm going to ask one last question, because you're obviously really knowledgeable about business. I mean, you've been running your own businesses for more than 20 years, as I've mentioned, and you've taken the Wilful Group, you've merged two different businesses together, you've you've created an innovative company with an amazing culture in a number of different sectors that are driving innovation themselves outside of you. Is there one bit of knowledge that you picked up along the way? Was there a book or even a podcast or something that one person has taught you that has left a real mark with you?
No leader is the finished article. So I think we often think, oh yeah, well, I've been around for 30 years. I know how to run a business. But no way are any of us a finished article. And life is a journey, and we are constantly learning.
Yeah, love it.
So the thing that I have learned over the last few years, and it's actually through the Willful culture experience that we've gone through, is this concept of regenerative leadership. So it's not, our history says that we've got a kind of command and control, hierarchical structures within organizations, but do they really get the best out of people? And as leaders, it's our responsibility to get the best out of people. So regenerative leadership is a new way of looking at how we can bring out the best in people, particularly in service industries. And obviously the UK is a huge service industry, service culture. So how can we bring out the best in people, and how can we really get them behind an organization rather than behind a leader who commands and controls, because we have to inspire as well. So there's a book called actually I think it might be, yeah, it's up there on the Leading by Nature, Regenerative Leadership by a guy called Giles Hutchins. Very different thinker, and he is really very alternative in the way that he thinks about leadership, but it has been really, really important, and I would definitely recommend that people go and have a read.
Fantastic. So it's called Regenerative Leadership, and it's by, could you repeat that?
Giles Hutchins. The concept is regenerative leadership. The book is called Leading by Nature, and it's by a guy called Giles Hutchins.
Brilliant. I'm gonna get that now. That sounds absolutely fascinating. So Rebecca, thank you very much. Thanks for your time today. I've really appreciated speaking with you. The Wilful Group is doing great things. You've got a very successful business. You've got great clients. You've got great ethos. You've clearly got a great team and a fantastic culture. Love to keep in contact with you, find out what you're doing in the future. Let's keep in touch. Rebecca.
Thanks.